When God decides to do good to us, He's guided by His principles, by His own way of seeing each of us and what He should and how He should give. And that is pretty much described and narrated in today's gospel, where the landowner, the vineyard owner, decides to hire the people at different hours. That's the story, certain image that shows who God is, inviting us to His kingdom. I will not go over every detail of this parable, but I will just stick to a couple of elements. One is that He's generous, and our ways of calculating and of understanding justice from our perspective are flipped, because we would rightly, to a certain degree, understand that, okay, if someone worked 1 hour, you receive the payment for 1 hour. Someone who worked 12 hours, equivalent to the amount that he spent working. But what is surprising, that every single laborer in the vineyard received the same payment, 1 denarius, which was basically a wage for the laborer's daily work. The day started at 6 a.m. and finished at 6 p.m., 12-hour shift. Well, obvious would be for us that if someone worked an hour from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., he should receive just a very tiny part of the daily wage. How come they are equal with those who started at 6 a.m.? But what it shows is that we don't understand God's generosity. We can be even scandalized how good He is, how abundant and rich in giving and pouring His gifts upon us. Because if we understand it on the spiritual level, and this is how this parable should be understood, not being in the vineyard of the Lord, working, being basically part of the kingdom, means we're out in the marketplace at the whim of the demons, of other hired masters. Not being involved in spreading the kingdom of God, we can be spreading the kingdom of the evil one, being truly beaten up. I met already many people who, to a certain extent, were grieving over the fact they did not respond to the Lord's invitation early on. They said, look, life in the world is miserable. A lot of pain. I remember one person was recounting how much anger, how much viciousness, how much envy was within me, looking at the world and others from a wrong perspective, constantly judging and criticizing and involved in gossips and rivalry. What a hell-like life. Once you're invited to the kingdom, the way of living changes. We start acquiring the owner's habits, way of living, which obviously we know Christ is teaching us: love and forgiveness and prayer for others and generosity and openness. This generosity is visible right in today's gospel, when the master, the owner of the vineyard, being so good, is exposed to the criticism of other laborers who had expected to receive more. But as I said, God's generosity is infinite. That's something interesting I already heard in different circles, when people said you have to work hard and gain with your own strength. But as the Psalm says, to his own children, God gives while they sleep, which means his generosity and providence is unbelievable. So you may really work very little, but because you have such a childlike trust in the Lord, you will receive a huge abundance. Basically, the inheritance that comes down to you from heaven. Because God can use different venues and ways of providing his gifts to us. He is not bound by any laws. The only law that is governing him is his freely given love to us. Don't you think sometimes it happens to us that even for doing good we get criticized? You want to be good, you want to be generous, you give yourself, and then instead of getting appreciation and gratitude, you get criticisms or a cold shoulder or even gossips or no acknowledgement at all. And if it bites you from this side, then what would be the first reaction? I'm not going to do anything good anymore. Forget it. I'll step back. I will not expose myself. I'm not going to risk. I'm not going to be criticized once again. Let them handle it. But God is different. Although he's criticized, although he's attacked, as Jesus Christ constantly being put to the test and criticized and attacked and being pulled into conversations where the Pharisees and Sadducees tried to make him fall, he never said, enough, I'm out of this place. You guys are wretches, you're full of interior corruption, ungrateful, there is deception within you. I'm out of it. I will not provide my grace anymore. I will not raise the dead. I will not heal the sick. I will not provide my goodness. The contrary, the Lord went all the way to the cross, although he was not applauded when he was hanging up there. Actually, he was ridiculed. He was spat upon. He was blasphemed against. This is the goodness of the Lord. And also, in the first reading, we find out, we may say, a theme that runs very closely to it, which is, let us have the king. But some people would say, I don't want to give up anything of my own, which means I don't want to risk. Because, and we hear different trees, so there's an olive tree, there's a fig tree. So why a vine should give up its wine and be a ruler? Why the fig tree should give up the figs, which is a symbol of saying, look, I have what is mine. I don't want to serve, to give, to be exposed. I don't want to risk in being good. And what happens? When we turn selfish with our time, with our lives, with our talents, those who are not supposed to be on the throne, which means governing and ruling and helping and guiding, they step up and they will make a lot of messes. What comes to us today is the Lord inviting us to say, look, risk with your life, risk with your time, risk even with your own personal plans and benefits, because ultimately the Lord had done this for us. And if we already taste the goodness of God and we experience that despite of our wretchedness, he keeps forgiving and loving and pouring his goodness upon us in a completely immeasurable way, then, as St. Paul says, do good and work not as for human beings, but as for the Lord, serving as for the Lord, knowing that you will receive the recompense from him, not from the human beings, working not for human eyes to see and appreciate, but for the Lord's eyes, that one day we will receive the recompense according to his design. The word says, eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor the mind of God managed to conceive what great goods, what magnitude of God's greatness will be given to us if we love Him. But this word love exactly applies to this theme of today, which is giving one's own self, not being compensated, loving others, forgetting one's own self, one's own plans, and being at the service of the Lord. Only on this path we will find true fulfillment and happiness of granting love unconditionally the way the Lord has loved each and every one of us.